Welcome into Training Camp Live. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith, and we are so excited to be back in action. Day one of training camp. I felt like I was going to school for the first day today. It's that excitement and that, like, oh my gosh, this whole new season. And it's not like it has been a boring week here before training camp even started. Just a casual Tampa Bay week of a White House visit.
That was fun.
And a ring ceremony. Plenty to be excited about. And speaking of, since we had the ring ceremony, we thought we'd have Scott bust out. Look at it. Look at it. There's the bling. I mean, it's like so sunny out here. I'm sure it's reflecting off the 8,000 diamond
319
surfaces.
diamonds just there on the top.
So, I mean, have you tried to, use it to look at that and twist right? I mean, you've gotten that down now. You've gotten that down to a T.
The twist off part is easy. Getting it back on takes
that takes a little bit more practice.
There we go.
Have you tried to use it to get anything yet? Get
I
into
have
a restaurant,
not. I have not. I went to a restaurant yesterday and we were the only ones there, so I didn't have to bust it out.
As
I did have it on me
It
at the time,
wasn't
though.
as rewarding of an experience.
I showed it to an older guy wearing a Bucs shirt and a Bucs hat, and he really enjoyed that. So.
That is amazing.
But
That
I
is
didn't
so
need
cool.
it to get in.
So now we got the ring. We're ready to go for training camp this next year. We figured we would kick things off by talking about just overall some of the news that has come out starting of camp before we get into some of the individual positions and things like that. So this week, tell us some of the newsworthy things that people may have missed that need to know today.
Right. So you know that the training camp roster limit is 90 players this year, and the Buccaneers aren't exactly there right now. They're at 89, but they'll probably fill that spot at some point. They'll probably have about 84 guys in practice today. Jordan Whitehead is on the reserve COVID list, and then 4 guys were placed on the active, physically unable to perform list, the PUP list, and that's Justin Watson, Cameron Brate, the rookie Chris Wilcox, and then John Franklin, the receiver who had the knee injury in last year's camp. So the idea of active PUP instead of reserve PUP is they actually still count against the roster limit, and they can be activated and brought back into practice at any point. So you might ask, then what's the point of putting them on a list? It doesn't save you a spot. It doesn't have any procedural stuff. The only point is if you put a guy on active PUP before camp starts, then you still have the option before the start of the regular season to put them on reserve PUP, in which case they wouldn't count and would be out for 6 weeks. If you don't do that now, you can't do that later. So you do it just in case you need it. Now, of course, we hope all 4 of those guys make it back to practice before camp ends, but if they don't, they can start on reserve PUP.
So looking at those 4 guys, which different position battles or roster spots would that potentially affect of how much is missing some time going to impact those guys in certain positions?
I think it's pretty important for 3 of the 4 of them. I don't think Cam Brate has much to worry about. I know the Bucs know exactly what he can do, and he's in he had a really good year last year, and I think he's pretty solid as one of your top 3 tight ends. The other 3 guys, I mean, one of them is a 7th-round draft pick, Chris Wilcox, and the Bucs have a lot of competition at cornerback. Then Justin Watson, probably with all the other receivers coming back and the addition of Jalen Darden, seems like a guy who might be on a bit of a bubble, though he does have a lot of special teams value. And then John Franklin was the other one, and that's a kind of a gadget guy, a very good athlete that I think Bruce Arians was excited about getting a chance to use last year, and then he had the knee injury in camp. So isn't a guy that's ever been established in the NFL. So all 3 of those guys would probably like to get on the field as soon as possible.
Okay, and as everybody can see, we've got some awesome camera angles of practice going on this year, so we're going to try to give you as much live look-ins to what's going on behind us as we possibly can. This first segment here, we wanted to get into the offense a little bit. So tell me some of the biggest storylines and things that you're going to be watching for the offense overall. And we know, again, that we've brought back all these starters, and there's not nearly as much, kind of parity and things that are up in the air as other training camps potentially. But let's take a look at some of the main storylines of the offense.
Well, I mean, to me, this is an incredible statistic here. If you look at the first column, it's how many of those things the Buccaneers as a whole, all the players combined, put together last year, how many rushing yards, how many receiving yards. And then the second column is how many of those are accounted for by players who are still on the team. And the third column is the percentage of that. So all of them, at least 96%, and some of them all the way up to 100%. That means we have all the players back that did those things. You basically don't have LaShawn McCoy is essentially the only thing you're missing out of that. And that's incredible. That just doesn't happen from one season to the next. I know we made a big deal, wrote some stories about how the Bucs were the first team since the late 70s to bring back all their starters from a Super Bowl winning team, but it goes well beyond that. It's beyond just the starters. It's pretty much every significant contributor to the offense last year is back. So you might say, well, then everything's kind of set. There's still some battles we could talk about.
That's true. And of course, most importantly, 100% of the Buccaneers Insider Lives and Training Camp Lives are back as well. 100%.
And much more of the fans are here this time.
And yes, which I was going to point out, we didn't bring that up off the top. We have been able to have fans here this year, and already I can feel the difference, that it feels like training camp again, that
Yes.
these are people that are so excited to be here. They were cheering as all the players came out, and what a difference that is. And looking forward to, of course, having those fans in the stadium. So,
Yes.
so you brought up that it's not as much of the position battles as we've had in years past, but what are the ones that you think that you're going to be keeping an eye on, of whether it is the roster spots or
Right.
the potential for a starting spot
Yeah.
to change?
No, I think for me on offense, the part that's really not figured out yet and is going to be the most interesting to watch is the running back situation. Just because, if you try to add up what happened last year, it's hard to figure out who's going to be your main guy, first of all. So is it Leonard Fournette, who was incredible in the playoffs? I mean, can you go away from that? If he's going to give you that every week, that seems like a starter. But then Ronald Jones didn't do anything to lose his job, except he got hurt and he went on COVID for a short period of time. Before that, he was your main guy, getting carries at a 2-to-1 clip or even more over Leonard Fournette. And he was on pace for 1,000 yards until he missed a couple games at the end. He got, I think, 978 was what he finished with. He easily would have gotten there. And he even set a Buccaneer record with 5.1 yards per carry last year. So, I mean, a 98-yarder helps that, obviously.
That does
but
help
still,
just a teeny bit, yep.
But still, you got two guys, and as Bruce Arians said during minicamp in June, he sees them both as starters. But how's that going to work? Who actually is going to start the game? Probably doesn't matter to Bruce who starts the game because he's just going to use them both, but it probably matters to the two guys. If I were either one of them, I'd want to be a starter.
And how about in terms of who makes it for that position group of, we have Keyshawn Vaughn and now you have Giovanni Bernard, that not just even who's the starting running back and maybe more carries, but how many guys get kept in that group and for some of those other non-starter types.
That's exactly right. And I would suspect if it's like the last few years that the Buccaneers would keep 4 running backs. That's the general number. But at least one of those, maybe 2, needs to be able to do something for you on special teams or they won't be active on game day. You would think the 2 you just mentioned there would be the other 2 to join Fournette and Jones. It's, not counting out Troy Maine Pope or anybody else, but those would seem to be the most likely. You brought in Giovanni Bernard, who's been one of the best pass-catching backs in the NFL over the last 8 years, and that's an area that the Bucs weren't great in last year. And you have Keyshawn Vaughn, who you drafted in the 3rd round just like 15 months ago. And I know they like him as a runner. They want to find out, can he catch passes? Can he pass protect? Can he be a full 3-down back? Because if you look at those 4 running backs, that's a nice core for this year. I like that a lot. But the only guy out of those 4 who's under contract for 2022 is Keyshawn Vaughn. So I would think at some point you'd want to find out what you have in that guy to see what you want to do moving forward. And if you're going to try to re-sign Ronald Jones, or if Leonard Fournette's going to go look for a longer deal somewhere else next year. A lot of questions to be answered first as to how those guys are arranged and who gets the touches this year, and then who's around past 2021.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And from looking at how running backs were used in the Tom Brady-led offense last year, how does that potentially affect the distribution of all of those guys, of what he likes to do, especially with those short passes? Does Giovanni Bernard's presence and expertise in that affect guys like Rojo and Fournette, even not as necessarily a starting point, but how many snaps they're getting?
That's the exact question. And I've been writing about these things several times in recent weeks. How does Giovanni Bernard in particular affect the number? We're talking about how do Jones and Fournette split the snaps, but do they collectively lose a percentage of their snaps? Because what if Giovanni Bernard becomes your 3rd-down back, your primary 3rd-down back? Leonard Fournette spent a lot of times, especially towards the end of the year, on 3rd downs because he was a pretty effective pass catcher, but he doesn't have the same track record that Giovanni Bernard has in that if you put him out there.
Okay, well, we still have plenty more coming up here on Training Camp Live. We're going to get into the defense in our next segment, and right now we want to take you looking back at the mini camp that we just had and to see all those highlights. That was the last time all these guys were out here on the field together. Take a look. Welcome back into Training Camp Live. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith, and we are going to be here every day that they have open practice, showing you guys as much of the live action behind us as we can. We know there are so many of you who would love to get to be here, so we want to make sure that we bring you into the action as much as we can. This last segment, we talked a little bit about the offense and specifically the running back situation. So now this block, we want to talk a little bit about the defense and maybe some of the key things that you're going to be watching at training camp overall for the defense.
Well, first of all, did you like that graphic we had about the offense and so many guys back? And
yeah, that was pretty handy.
Take a look at this one.
Oh, we got another one.
The defense is even more.
Look at that.
Snaps.
99.5.
Basically, you lost Andrew Adams, who played maybe 30-something snaps, and Ryan Smith, who didn't play any defensive snaps last year. Otherwise, every single player, not just the starters, is back. So every single tackle, sack, interception, and forced fumble from last year is accounted for by players still on the team now.
That's crazy.
It's amazing. I've never seen anything like this.
No,
honest with you.
That's incredible. Because you're right. It's not just about bringing people back. It's about, that means you have to have brought back so many people and for them to be contributors, which is absolutely amazing. So looking at that, what do you think that means for what this defense could look like this year, the continuity, what that means for Todd Bowles, what that means for the whole scheme?
Well, that's another good point. Continuity also includes the coaching staff. And in a perfect world, in a just world perhaps, Todd Bowles probably would have got another shot at a head coaching job after the job he's done here in a couple of years as a coordinator. I'm afraid that that's eventually going to happen. Happy for him, but but at least this year the continuity's there, and he's got all these guys. Remember how I used to talk about them as pups, and they were still learning a lot of things. And 2 years in now, I think, and most of the same crew for both of those years, I think he's probably got a pretty good feel for what these guys can do. And this was a defense that was ascending last year. I mean, they were playing their best ball in the last month or two of the season. There were some ups and downs along the way, but towards the end, they were really, really playing well and really creating a lot of turnovers and really playing with a ton of confidence. So you have all of those principal figures back, like Ndamukong Suh, Shaq Barrett. Obviously, he got the new long-term deal. We re-signed just about everybody that we had to, and it looks really good. It's very promising.
It is crazy to think back to this time last year and what people were saying about this team and specifically this defense. And I remember actually Tom Brady brought it up in his speech at the ring ceremony that he was talking about these young, DBs and how he said that nobody thought you guys were going to do anything last year. He said it a little more colorfully than that, but for now we'll just call it that. And to think back to that idea that I think there was even a ranking that had them dead last.
Everybody ranks everything, so it was just some random site that ranked them, but they found it.
Yeah, which please someone do that again this year because that seemed to motivate them pretty well. So now looking at that, what do you think the expectations could be for that DB group and what they could look like this year?
Well, the good thing about it is that they're still very young guys. I mean, what is Carlton Davis is only going into his fourth year,
Yeah,
right?
he's the old guy.
Yeah, he's going into his fourth year. Sean Murphy-Bunting.
This is why we feel old all the time being here.
That's one of the reasons.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. But we talk about how old
I've got some others.
Carlton is.
Jamel Dean, Antoine Winfield Jr. was just a rookie last year, made a huge impact. Jordan Whitehead's still a young guy. They're all still very young guys, but they've had a lot of time playing together, and they've logged a lot of snaps. And so they're young guys with still in the prime of their athletic talents, but also pretty experienced, and that's really a nice combination to have.
Yeah, that's so true. And how about, if you talk about continuity, inside linebacker, Levante David is the definition of continuity for this franchise, and I know he was someone that everybody was so excited to watch get a ring. And looking at him and Devin, and now here Devin made captain as a second-year player last year, and we talked about what big strides he made. What do you think that the two of them together will look like this year, and what, especially for Devin, you think that a lot of times that third year, I think, is when we talk about guys making such big leaps that, there's the big one from first to second year, but then third year, you're a vet now in this league at that point.
Especially since they had a better offseason this time than last year to prepare. I think what Devin White, what we know he is, and what makes him such a player that you're starting to see on lists now amongst the best inside or off-ball linebackers in the league, is that he has incredible physical talents and makes huge plays. I mean, look at all the splash plays he made in the postseason. In addition to making about 14 tackles per game, he missed the first game, but otherwise, I think what Devin White needs to refine his game is a little bit more of what Levante David is. I mean, Levante David is the absolute, you kind of said it, is the absolute epitome of a guy that does his job and does everything right and always does what you expect him to do, and is still 9 years into his career is playing at the same high level. Consistency from week to week to week. Devin White, if he can consistently produce the way he produces at the top of his game from week to week, and including in terms of pass coverage, then you're talking maybe the best inside linebacker in the league and probably the best duo in the league, I would say.
Yes, and I think they would probably say the same thing. So that position to me is an interesting one in terms of the backups and that being a battle to watch and who makes the roster, who makes an impact, who's going to maybe, we we talk about these other ones where guys can get some snaps, get some rotations in, but Devin and
Not
Levante,
there, yeah.
they ain't coming off the field.
Right.
They play the whole time. But still, that is an interesting group of, if there was, knock on all the woods, and injury and things like that, that you need these backup guys. Who are you going to be looking out for this camp, and who are some of the guys that you think could end up playing a big role in that area?
Yeah, that's a good question, because last year you did have those two guys, Devin White and Levante David. They might have been the best starting duo in the league. We certainly think so. Unfortunately, other than a little bit of a time on the COVID list for Devin White at the end, their backups weren't needed, because the Buccaneers essentially ran with Kevin Minter as the backup to both spots, and there really wasn't a main fourth guy. It went around a little bit for Jack Sitchie and Chappelle Russell and Dayon Buchanan a little bit, but not a guy that you really were counting on there. And none of those guys are with us any longer. So you still have Kevin Minter. He's the guy you really trust, the veteran who you've thrown in a few times, and he's done well for you. But now you're really going to be watching Grant Stewart and KJ Britt, the two draft picks, who were drafted in one part specifically because the Buccaneers believe they can step in immediately on special teams. But maybe down the line, those guys can be a guy you trust if Levante or Devin isn't available. So those are two guys worth watching.
Yeah, I think that KJ Britt is someone that I am very excited to see play just in practice and in training camp, and especially some of those preseason games. And even a guy like Grant Stewart, you're Mr. Irrelevant, that we talked about the need to compete in special teams to get some of these roles, and that these guys are brought in because they're known as big hitters, and you don't get to see that in minicamp. You don't get to watch.
That's true.
That's a position group that we really have no idea what they look like yet until some of those preseason games. And then you see that downhill special teams trying to make an impact role, and that's when they can start really separating themselves. Whereas minicamp, it's so hard for so many of those defensive guys to really shine.
That's a great point, but even more so the preseason games. The Coach Armstrong has said that's when he'll really find out who can play on special teams, and it's very tough for him because he has to get so many guys in and out of game to get to look at, but it's worth it. But another guy I should bring up at that position is Joe Jones of Northwestern University, who's a veteran that the Buccaneers added. And he's got a lot of experience that can play on special teams.
Yeah, that's a good point. And how about the outside linebacker group? That's one that is a little different than the inside, where you do get guys rotating in, that just because you're not a starter does not mean you are not going to potentially have some contributing factors to this team. So, of course, we know Joe Tryon, the big first-round draft pick, who everybody's going to be wanting to see and wanting to look out for. So let's talk a little bit about him, and then the other guys that we could see competing for those spots, and how you think that rotation could look.
Well, the Bucs obviously have a good starting duo, a great one with Shaq Barrett and JPP, and they're kind of unusual in that they play so many snaps. But even so, you definitely want a rotation at that spot. And last year it was almost totally just a three-man rotation, with Anthony Nelson getting about 25% of the snaps to spell those two guys, and then Cam Gill got some here and there, but when you look at it at the end, it really wasn't a ton. He did have half a sack in the Super Bowl, which was great. I know they like him a lot, and Quentin Bell, but Joe Tryon and Anthony Nelson, if those two guys could carve out a little bit bigger of a role, you could spell your top two guys a little bit more, and hopefully have fresh legs and good pass rush on the field at all time.
And with Joe Tryon, what is it about him that made them feel so confident to take him in that first round when he hadn't played for a year, and therefore there might be a lot of Bucs fans that are like, I have literally never seen this guy play.
Right.
What are we looking at about what they like about him and what he could bring if you do see him out there?
Okay, so Joe Tryon has the talents to be a good edge rusher in terms of getting around guys and making moves, but he's already a good pass rusher on the edge with his power game. And that's a lot harder to teach, the coaches say. He already has the ability to power through the blockers in front of him. Now they're going to try to open up his toolbox in terms of his edge rushing moves, in terms of getting around guys, not always just overpowering them. So they think there's a lot of untapped potential there. And he did produce well, especially at the very end of the last year he played. Like you said, he sat out last year, but at the end of 2019, he was playing really, really well.
Well, you heard a little bit about what we think of Joe Tryon. Let's hear in his own words. Let's meet Joe Tryon in this edition of Meet the Rookies.
Taking a year out of football, it really made me value football a lot more. It was something that came, around every year. I trained for every year, expected to play in every year. And with COVID, it made me realize that there's other things outside of football that, are important, but definitely, football is something that I really value, and it's something that I miss a lot. I definitely got better in ways that, I wasn't able to get better in, if I was training for the regular season. Found ways to add value to my life, doing a lot of yoga, doing a lot of, mental work, things that, just help me, stay focused, when I knew, I wasn't going to be playing football. I definitely feel like it benefited me. You know, I've definitely made strides in my mental health. I'm just excited to get back to playing football, you know, doing what I love. Being at this facility, it means a lot to me, you know, seeing the dudes that I looked up to growing up. It adds a different level of, you know, urgency in my preparation to become an NFL player. And, you know, I'm still learning what it takes to become an NFL player. So, you know, it's like an ongoing process, but I believe it's going to be a great career for me here. A lot of opportunities to learn, see a lot of opportunities to take their game and put it in my game. JPP, similar frame, really long career, someone that I can just learn from, you know, just absorb all the knowledge he has. And same thing goes with Shaq Barrett, someone that is also high in the sack categories, definitely really respected in the league. Not the similar body types, but, you know, you can still take a lot of things from his game and put it into mine. So, you know, my dog Vita, it's definitely been a great career for him here so far. You know, I've seen him grow. I came in as a freshman and he was getting, you know, the looks, you know, first round pick. You know, I definitely got to model myself after, not at a positional standpoint, but, you know, just as a pro standpoint. Having dudes who have that type of accolades and those type of accomplishments behind their name, you know, it's really special. And whatever my role is, you know I'll be able to, you know, always improve and, you know, just being at practice with them every day, seeing how they, you know, hold themselves is something that, you know, I'll definitely absorb from. Being a rookie, you know, you don't really know what's going on. You know, you're just trying to, you know, fit in any way you can. So, you know, I believe, you know, just making any impact I can on the team is going to be something, you know, I look back on as successful.
Welcome back into Training Camp Live. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And this is our final segment, which means we are going to take your Facebook questions. So if you're not already watching on there, head on over to our Facebook page. And in the comment section, you can leave your questions for us. Again, we're going to be trying to show you as much footage of practice as we can, which, speaking of that right there, as we give people a chance to submit some of their questions, wanted to show you guys number 26 right there, Cam Kenley. He is the guy who he had been in the Naval Academy, has to do some service because of that. And there was the whole debate about whether or not they were going to allow him to defer his service. And it looked like it wasn't going to happen. It looked like he wasn't going to get to play. And then a 11th hour decision comes in, allowing him to come here to practice. So tell us a little bit about him and what he could mean to this roster, the odds of him making the squad, a little bit about what fans should know about him.
Well, I know that Coach Arians was really impressed with him in the rookie mini camp. You know, this is a guy, he's an undrafted free agent. So, you know, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. There's 10 cornerbacks. Well, 9 right now because Chris Wilcox isn't practicing. But there's 10 cornerbacks on the roster, and you probably keep 5 or at the most 6. So it's not a simple competition for anybody that's a little bit on the bubble. But then again, we're probably going to have 16-man practice squads again, so there'll be a way to keep several players around. I think, you know, assuming he performs well, the Bucs would like to keep this kid around because he's not just talented. He's also, like, a really smart kid, and I know Bruce Arians likes him a lot. Obviously, the Navy thought very highly of him, that they wanted to get him right into his service, right? I mean, that's what Bruce Arians said. He said,
it's a good point. You got an NFL team and the Navy competing for this guy.
Yeah.
That means something.
I think that says something about this kid.
Yeah.
It's a good story, and you know, right off the bat, I could tell from questions I would get from mailbags and so on that fans really like the idea of this kid getting a shot. So we're all glad that he is. Yeah.
Okay. Our first question comes from William. Again, we are taking your Facebook questions. So if you're not already on there, leave it in the comment section underneath the Facebook Live video. William just wanted to know about Brate's injury and what we know about it. And then I thought overall we could then talk a little bit about that O-line room as a whole and what we could see in terms of each guy's role for this year.
I didn't really get a chance when I got here this morning to find out much about Cam Brate's situation. If you have any more, do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so I don't think they've actually released much about how long it means he might be out or anything like that. So to your point earlier, it's not like they don't know what he brings. So it's not about, I don't think him missing training camp preseason is going to matter. So maybe, you know, I think that it didn't to me sound like it would be this real long-term sort of thing from what I saw. But again, until they sort of say anything official in a press conference, I never like to speculate on that. I know neither of us do.
Absolutely right.
But how about if we talked about if he were to miss some actual game time, what would that mean for the group overall?
Yeah, it's more opportunity for Tanner Hudson and Cody McElroy in particular. The Bucs did just sign a new tight end yesterday, Daquan Hampton, who actually played receiver at USC, and he's been out of college for about 5 or 6 years now. He's played in like the XFL and the Alliance of American Football and Spring League. So he's converted now. There's Hudson and McElroy. he's converted now to a tight end, and so he'll get a shot. But I think these two guys would be in competition to be the next one to step up anytime Cam Brate isn't available. And they both are really good pass catchers. In fact, Mike Evans has said before that Tanner Hudson has the best hands on the team other than himself.
Yeah.
So we've seen it in preseason action. We've seen Cody McElroy a little bit too. Talented guys. I wonder how developed their blocking skills are. That's probably a big question.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And how much they can contribute on special teams.
Right. Samuel asked, did we retain all of our coaches or did we add any new ones?
We lost one coach.
Antoine Randall.
Yeah, Antoine Randall. I think he went to the Lions. We added a few.
Yeah, we have AQ Shipley.
That's right.
Well, and then of course we
always
always have.
This question.
I know. Yeah, it's tough because we do
so
see
many
them.
coaches.
There are so many of them out there. Well, and of course we do have the fellowship coaches, which is always cool that people should go check out online the story that you guys put up about our different people. We actually have one of them. It was the first female D1 position coach.
Okay, good.
That I think she was the quarterbacks coach at Brown potentially, if I get that right. So we added AQ Shipley. We have a couple, but I mean, to our point, the continuity is incredible. It is not just the players. It is almost entirely that same way we had that 99.5% on the snaps. It's about the same with coaches. Jermaine had also asked, is the ring heavy, Scott? I've seen his arm's just been shaking, struggling to hold it.
It has surprising heft. That was when we pulled him out of the boxes. Everybody was like, "Wow, this is pretty hefty."
It is serious. Those things are they are not joking.
And they're very impressive in terms of the detail. Like there, you see, there's the name side. It has my name on it.
Yep, has the name.
Has one team, one cause.
One team. Yeah, I loved all the details with that. And there's the trust, loyalty, respect on the inside.
Right.
Those little details are great. So Clifton asked us, what position battle are you most interested in seeing at training camp?
Well, I guess I don't want to repeat myself because the number one for me is the running back, but I went over that quite a bit. And then, I am interested to see how the rotation works out at the outside linebacker position. But if you want to talk about a position battle, I think that fourth safety position will be interesting. And the Bucs are a little low on safeties right now. Wouldn't be surprised to see us add one. We do have an open spot with Curtis Riley was waived injured, and then Jordan Whitehead went on the COVID list for now. Hopefully that won't be long. But they're down to 6 safeties right now, and I think they wanted to roll with more like 8 or 9. But you have obviously you have Jordan Whitehead when he gets back, and you have Antoine Winfield Jr. coming off an incredible rookie season, and you got Mike Edwards, who is probably like a third starter for you. And really, I thought he was playing quite well in the second half of the season. I think those 3 guys are pretty safe as your top 3, but you probably want to keep at least 4. And you have Javon Hagan, who the Bucs liked last year, an undrafted rookie who got a little playing time at the end, and apparently he's come in even better shape this year, and so the coaches are happy about that. And then another veteran that the Bucs brought in is former Packer Raven Green, who actually played pretty well when he got on the field at Green Bay. He just had a little bit of trouble staying healthy. Right,
yeah. And then we had, it worked out well. Abraham, his question was, what is the status of Jordan Whitehead? So how long do we think, would we potentially be out of him because of having the COVID thing? And then just overall, what do you think that rotation looks like without him out there?
It's a little harder. Well, I mean, Mike Edwards would just step up and be the other starter next to Antoine Winfield. It's a little harder for me to figure how long that will be, because when you're in the regular season, you usually had, okay, he has to miss at least this many days, and then he has to be cleared. So, the main issue was, would he be out long enough to miss a game? It's not yet clear to me how long a guy has to be on, or does it depend on how long it takes him to recover? Do they have to be tested a certain number of days? There's some new ways that the protocol is being enforced this year, and I don't think we all really have a firm grasp on it yet. So I would have a hard time predicting exactly when Jordan is going to be back. I just would have to assume it won't be too long.
Okay. And then Mark had asked, where do you think Trask sits in terms of depth in the QB rotation?
I would think he's 3, especially if you keep 3. I mean, he might be 4 right now, but in terms of the regular season, you obviously have Tom Brady. I think we can say he's going to be the starter, right? Spoiler alert.
I mean, that's a hot take. It's a real hot take. I don't know if you're willing to go out on a limb on that one.
I'm gonna put my reputation on the line here and say Tom Brady will be starting for the Buccaneers at quarterback this year. And I would think that they would still want an experienced veteran. Bruce Arians seems to like to have an experienced veteran backup, and that's either obviously Blaine Gabbert or Ryan Griffin. And Blaine Gabbert has the more experience, so he probably starts as your number 2. And you might keep 3, but do you keep the 3 veterans and then risk putting Kyle Trask on waivers, get him on the practice squad? I don't think so. I think you draft a guy in the second round, you're not going to let him have a chance to get exposed to waivers. You're going to keep him,
Right.
even if you don't expect him to play this year. So right now, he's probably your fourth guy. For the regular season, I think he's got the best shot at being your third guy.
All right, we'll close with this one. Billy asked, how does Jalen Darden look?
Well, I thought he looked really good, and I haven't been able to watch yet because we've been here since the start of this camp. But I thought he looked really good in the mini camp. He's very sudden. He's good laterally, and I'll just tell you right now, I like the question because he's like the guy I'm most excited about amongst all these rookies.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to watch. We'll keep an eye on him. All right, well, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Training Camp Live. Again, we are going to be out here every day that practice is open, showing you as much live footage of camp as we can, taking your Facebook questions, showing you some other amazing video content we have. So make sure you come back, and we'll see you later.